So 2 Samuel chapter 9, this is what it says in verse 1. This is a very short chapter about David seeking to show the kindness of God to someone that came from Saul's family. Remember, David and Saul, even though they were relatives, they were father-in-law and son-in-law, most of their existence together was not good. The father-in-law always wanted to kill David. He was jealous of David. And so Saul, the father-in-law, was king. He was king for 40 years. David takes over the throne after Saul's 40 years. And David remembers, obviously, that he has made a promise to Saul's son Jonathan, that when I take the kingship, and you know that I will when I become king, the promise, the covenant was, I will not kill all of your family members. Now that might sound crazy in America because we don't do that anymore, but understand there was a time on earth that when a new king became king, the way he solidified and made safe his position as king was to kill any other male who could ever challenge his throne. I'm going to destroy them all. I'm going to kill all Saul's family, all his sons, all his brothers, all his cousins. Everybody, I'm going to wipe them off so that my throne can be protected. That's the way the world has worked for most of the time humans have been in existence. We simply live in a civilized country, but most of the world probably still lives like that. Not very well spoken of in the press. David says, realizing that he is king, Saul has long since been killed in battle, Jonathan has long since been killed in battle, and David seeks to honor that promise that he made, that I not only won't kill your family, but I'll continue to provide for your family. I won't try to wipe your name off the planet. That's what David is doing here. He's keeping his word. He's keeping a contract, a covenant that he made with his friend Jonathan, and he personally seeks out someone. Don't lose sight of that aggressive love. David just doesn't wait around and, if God sends me somebody to take care of, I'll take care of them because I made a promise to Jonathan. He's aggressive. He goes out in search of someone for Saul's family to keep his promise to. So verse 1, that's what this story is about, 2 Samuel chapter 9. David said, is there yet anyone left of the house of Saul? A lot of his sons died on Mount Gilboa. A lot of his family died there. A lot of the army died on Mount Gilboa. Is there anyone left that has Saul's blood that I can keep my promise to? That I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake. Remember again, Jonathan is Saul's son who David made these promises to. I showed you last time. Verse 2, there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba. So he's the chief. Saul is dead. His household is dead. Ishbosheth is dead. Saul's son who was king for 7.5 years. All these people are dead. So the servant of the house becomes the ruler of the house. So a servant here, Ziba, is the ruler of Saul's estate, whatever's left. And they called him to David. Bring this man in to David so David can ask him, tell me, is anyone left of Saul's family, any males? And the king said to Ziba, are you Ziba? And he said, I am your servant. What do you need, sire, my lord? The king, David, says to Ziba, is there not yet anyone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God? I want to imitate the loving kindness and promise-keeping character of God. I want to imitate that to a man of Saul's family. Is there anybody left, Ziba? That's the question. And Ziba says to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan who is crippled in both his feet. And I showed you last time the verses where we saw that when his maid, when this young boy, Mephibosheth, when he was 5 years old, the lady that was taking care of him found out that Saul and Jonathan, his father, had been killed on Mount Gilboa, and she runs for her life, takes the little boy with her, and in their haste, they have some sort of accident, and Mephibosheth falls and breaks his legs and becomes lame. He wasn't lame from birth, he became lame. So the king says, so now King David knows there is a man left I can show the loving kindness of God to. So the king says, where is he? And Ziba said to the king, behold, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Ammiel, in Lodebar. So in their haste to run for their lives, because remember what I just told you, it was common for a new king to kill all the threats to his throne. And here we have a grandson of Saul in this man Mephibosheth, and his maid knows, the woman that was taking care of him, his caretaker knows that if the king is dead and the king's son is dead, and I have the king's grandson, the chance of the army coming to look for him and killing him, the chance of David moving in to kill him is great, because it was common practice. So she has crossed the river Jordan. This is the river Jordan that you see right here in the center. The river Jordan flows from north to south, from the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea. And you'll see that on the east side of the river, everything on the west side of the river is the promised land, the land of Canaan. Everything on the east side of the river is not. They have actually left the land that Saul was king over for safety. They have gone to Lodebar. That's where he is. So now David knows where it is, where he is. In verse 5, the King David sent him and brought him. Another aggressive love event. Now listen, why couldn't David take care of Mephibosheth and Lodebar? Why couldn't David have a house built for him there, send him regular food there, send him whatever he needs there? But you know what? I don't want to see you, you grandson of Saul. I'll care for you at a distance, and that'll be keeping my promise good enough. I would make the argument that that would be keeping his promise. All he promised to do was not kill them, not wipe their name from the face of the earth. But David doesn't do that. David goes a step further. David sent and brought him from the house of Machir, the son of Ammiel, from Lodebar. Verse 6 says, Mephibosheth. Here's the first time we see his name. Mephibosheth is his name. We pronounce it Mephibosheth in English. Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face, and he prostrated himself. That means he kneeled before David the way you would before a king. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he said, here is your servant. We'll see in just a minute that he calls himself a dead dog. Mephibosheth's, he's a crippled, disregarded man. He's not a man of influence. Even though he's the king's son, his crippling has made him unable to ever rule as king, to ever run a household. He's a simply disregarded man. He will call himself a dog. And here the king of Israel has called him into his palace, into his presence, and called him by his personal name. Who am I that you even know my name? David says Mephibosheth, and Mephibosheth says while bowed before his king, I'm here as your servant. Fearful, not understanding why I'm here, but here I am, your servant. And David says to him, understanding Mephibosheth's fear, David says, do not fear. I've not brought you here for harm. The opposite is true. I will surely show kindness to you for the sake of your father Jonathan. What Mephibosheth doesn't know is I made a promise to your father, and today I'm beginning to keep the promise. The boy couldn't have known that, but now he knows. I will surely show kindness to you for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land of your grandfather Saul, and you shall eat at my table, the king of Israel's table, regularly. A couple of things here. David offers three things to Mephibosheth here. Three things that Mephibosheth never thought in his wildest dreams that he would have offered to him, certainly not by David. Number one is, I'll be kind to you and not kill you. Again, this was common practice in the days, that a king would kill all the threats to his throne. Even his own brothers. We'll see that as we go into 1 Kings and 2 Kings. Jewish kings killing their family members to keep the throne for themselves. So the first part of the promise, I'll be kind to you. Do not fear. I will show kindness to you. That means I won't kill you. Number two, or here, a couple more thoughts. Mephibosheth was no threat to David because of his lameness. He could never rule as king. He could never lead the armies in and out of battle as a lame man. So he was no threat. He could not rule Israel or lead Israeli men in battle against David. David knew this man is no threat. This man really is a disregarded man. The man's not even living in the promised land, not even living among his tribes people. Let me ask you a question. Somebody should know the answer to this. What tribe of Levi, or what tribe of Israel was Saul from? Saul was a Benjamite. If I showed you the map of Israel and I asked you, where is Benjamin's tribal territory? The answer is, why, it's right here. Right here, just north of Jerusalem, a little circle, the tribe of Benjamin. This man is a Benjamite, the grandson of a Benjamite king, and he's living not only outside of the tribal allotment to Benjamin, but outside of the promised land. And David says, not only will I be kind to you and not kill you, but because you're no threat to me, you could never lead Israeli men, but I will give you the land holdings of your grandfather Saul. Where are those land holdings? In the tribal allotment of Benjamin. I'm giving you a life in the land of promise among your tribal people. I will bring you back to Benjamin and give you all the land of your grandfather Saul. It's the kindest thing you could do for a Jew. Bring him back to his family land. And that's what David promises to do. I'm going to grant you everything that once was your grandfather Saul's, I'm going to give to you. Jonathan never inherited it. Why is that? Because Saul and Jonathan died on the same day in battle. So father didn't die and give all his inheritance to his son Jonathan, and then Jonathan die and give his inheritance to Mephibosheth. It wasn't able to happen because Saul and Jonathan died on the same day on Mount Gilboa. David says, I'm going to make all this right. Ziba has been the servant, and because you're a lame, crippled man living outside of the land, Ziba has taken all of Saul's holdings and has run his estate for him. I'm going to strip it away from a man who doesn't deserve it. He's not family. He's not a Benjamite. He's not Saul's family. He's just Saul's servant. I'm going to take it from him, Mephibosheth, and I will present it to you. Can you imagine Mephibosheth, this crippled man, thinking, what is going on here? Who are you that you would be so kind to a dead dog? The third thing David promises him, I'll provide a royal pension for you with regular meals in the king's palace. I'm giving you your grandfather's land back. I'll take care of your family. You'll eat regularly at my table. If you can eat at the king's table, that means there's nothing you will lack. I'm going to provide it all. Again, can you imagine being Mephibosheth here, thinking, for years I've lived in Lo-Debar as a crippled man, aging, getting into his early 20s probably, maybe even a little more than that. He's got a son, as we'll find out. Mephibosheth has a young son. So he's not a boy, he's not a teenager, but certainly he's not older than 30. He's been disregarded by the family. He's just the crippled cousin. And all of a sudden, David raises this man up and does these things for him. It's David. The character that you should be looking at here is David. Aggressive love. Didn't have to do anything. All he had to do was say, you know what, I'm not going to kill you. I'll send you a few bucks every year and we'll call it good. That wasn't the heart of David. When God gives in an overflowing way. And when David sought to imitate God, the only way he could do it is by completely overblowing the situation. Remember what God promised David, I'll make your name great, I'll give you rest on every side, I'll plant you in a land that will be yours, no one will ever take it from you, I'll have your son, your descendant, after you rise to your throne, he will build my temple. All these things, David's saying, wait, it's too much. Who am I that you are mindful of me? Psalm 8, David prays that prayer. When I see the stars in the heavens, all the work of your fingers, what is man that you are mindful of us? Who am I? And David, in that same overflowing way, does all this for Mephibosheth, and Mephibosheth has the same response that David did. Look at verse 8. Again, he bowed himself even lower to the ground, and Mephibosheth says, what is your servant that you should regard a dead dog like me? I'm nothing in the kingdom. I'm crippled. I've been disregarded by society. I have to be cared for, and yet you are holding me up like this. I don't deserve it. And David would have said, neither did I deserve anything that the Lord promised me. I can give you these things because God has given me these things. Let's talk about Ziba just for a second. Who is this man, Ziba? The servant of Saul that told David, this is where Mephibosheth is, this is where he lives, this is who he is, a crippled son of Jonathan. This man is in charge of Saul's estate. He's what would have been some sort of, I don't know what the words would have been there, what their titles would have been, but maybe the butler in the house, the head man in charge of everything. And King Saul died, King Jonathan died, all the brothers died. All of a sudden, there's no royal family in the house. Who's going to continue this household? Well, the butler does, the main man that's in charge. Kind of like Joseph was in the land of Egypt in Potiphar's house. And then in Pharaoh's house, Joseph had risen to the head guy in the house, even though he wasn't family. That's who Ziba is. I want you to know who this guy is, because as we continue this story this morning, you're going to have a choice. I'm not going to push it on you. Maybe I will, but I won't. You're going to get to make the decision, who's lying the least? Is Mephibosheth loyal to King David, or is Ziba loyal to King David? They are pitted one against the other in this story, and we get to decide which is it that's telling the truth. We'll see how David responded the first time, and then we'll see how David responded the second time, probably realizing, I messed this up. So David calls for Ziba. He was in charge of Saul's estate. And all of a sudden, because of this crazy Judahite king named David, all of a sudden, me being in charge, I am being demoted, and this crippled boy is being elevated, and I am going to have to serve him. And that's going to lead to some jealousy. Maybe infuriation from Ziba, who would soon turn against his master Mephibosheth. We'll see that as the story unfolds. Verse 9, the king called Saul's servant Ziba. Now he's spoken to Mephibosheth. He's given told Mephibosheth what he's going to do for him. He calls the servant man back into the room. David calls for Ziba, and he said to him, all that belonged to Saul and to all of Saul's house I have given to your master's grandson. Imagine the seething that's starting. You did what? I rule this house. Not anymore, you don't. Now you serve this man who rules the house. Just like that, the king changed Ziba's life. All that belonged to Saul I have given to Mephibosheth, your master's grandson. You and your sons and your grandson, you and your sons and your servants shall cultivate his land for him. Oh, this would have been a bitter pill. You shall bring in the produce, so you'll work the land. He's crippled and can't do it. You'll work the land. You'll bring in the produce so that Mephibosheth may have food. Oh, this is getting more and more demeaning as it goes on. Nevertheless, Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall eat at my table, the king's table, regularly. So he's taken this man Ziba from being the head of the house, made Mephibosheth the head. He may not even know, other than know who he is and where he was. He may not have any real relations with Mephibosheth. He's been gone for years to Lodebar, the far country we'll call it, while I have been here, the elder son taking care of the estate. It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Why I have been here, the loyal one to my master Saul's estate, and been doing the work, and all of a sudden this prodigal type comes in from the far country. You've given him everything and you've made me servant under him. What kind of deal is that? But that's the deal. Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. We're not told from what tribe he was from. I'm sure he was a Benjamite, but we're not told anything further about him. Ziba answers the king in verse 11, according to all that my lord the king commands, his servant, so your servant will do. Commands his servant. I'll read it again. According to all that my lord the king commands his servant, so his servant will do. If you've said it, king, mine is not to reason why. Mine is but to do or die. You are the king. And so he reluctantly, I would say, agreed to do what King David had said. Mephibosheth will be my master. I will serve Mephibosheth the same way I served Saul. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table as one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. So we know that he was old enough to bear children. He had a son named Micah. All who lived in the house of Ziba were servants to Mephibosheth. This kid from the far country swoops into town, takes over the royal bedroom. Imagine that. Imagine the bitter pill that would be if you were this man, Ziba. Just one quick verse. In 1 Chronicles chapter 8, there's a name change here. I just want you to be aware of the name in case you go to 1 Chronicles and you read the account in 1 Chronicles which mirrors this one. In 1 Chronicles 8, we see that Mephibosheth also had another name. It says the son of Jonathan was Merib Baal. This is the name that Jonathan gave him, Merib Baal. And Merib Baal became the father of Micah. Merib Baal is the same person as Mephibosheth. Jonathan's son, Micah's father. Merib Baal is Mephibosheth. I just wanted to show you that. So when you read it, you think, well, who is this guy? His name was changed to Mephibosheth later in life, but his father named him Merib Baal. Verse 13, it says, so Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem. No longer did he live outside of the land of Canaan. No longer did he live in Lodebar. Now he moved into Jerusalem, near the king, in the tribal territory of Benjamin. For he ate at the king's table regularly. And then it repeats again, now he was lame in both feet. Totally the host, or the guest, I should say, of King David in the royal palace. But I want to move further. That's the end of 2 Samuel chapter 9. Next time we get together, we'll go into 2 Samuel chapter 10, look into a completely different situation. But right now, I want to see the end of the story of Mephibosheth. Where else does he show up in Scripture? How does this wonderful story of God or David promising these three things? I'll give you your grandfather's land. I'll keep you safe. I'll give you plenty. You'll eat at the king's table. Where does this end? How does it go on? Do we know? The answer is yes, we do know, because it's spoken of in the Scripture. So further into the book, we're in 2 Samuel chapter 9, but I'm going to show you a verse from 2 Samuel chapter 15. And look what the Scripture says. in 2 Samuel chapter 15. By the time we get to this verse, David's throne is being attacked by his own son. David has a son named Avshalom, which is ironic because Avshalom means my father is peace. I have a peaceful father. Av is the Hebrew word for father, Abba, Av, and Shalom is the word for peace. So Avshalom means peace is my father, and this is the one who would rebel against his father and try to steal David's throne. That's what's going on in 2 Samuel chapter 15. A messenger came to David, saying to David, the hearts of the men of Israel are with Avshalom, your son. He is in the midst of a military political coup. Your own son is stealing the throne from you while you are the sitting king. Avshalom, Absalom, if you prefer, is stealing the throne from you. That's what's going on. King David's son Absalom would attempt a coup, a political coup, to take the throne from his father by force. David chose to flee Jerusalem because David knows Absalom's heart, knows this is a crazy son, and he'll kill us all. Because if he wants to secure his position as king, in the days in which this occurred, the king would kill all his political enemies. David knows my son Absalom is capable of killing us all and sleeping well that night. We got to leave here. That's what's going on. David is fleeing Jerusalem, the capital city, to keep this mad son Absalom, whom he adored, from killing them. A messenger came to David, says, the men of Israel are with Absalom. The next verse says, David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, we have to act. We can't stay here. Arise, David says, and let us flee. Imagine David, after running from Saul, his father-in-law, the king, for 11 years, from age 19 to 30. Here another 25, 30 years go by, and I'm doing it again. From my own son this time, I'm fleeing for my life. But David says, arise and let us flee, for otherwise none of us will escape from Absalom. He'll kill every last one of us. Go in haste. We got to do this right now and quickly. Go in haste, or he will overtake us quickly and bring down calamity on us and strike the city Jerusalem with the edge of the sword. For the sake of God's city Jerusalem and God's anointed king, the safest thing for us to do is to leave. And that's exactly what David did. He left. The question is, who will support David and who will support his son, this conspirator, Absalom? Which side will Mephibosheth be on? The next verse says this. Well, we're down the verses. We're still in chapter 15, but I've gone from verse 14 all the way to verse 30. David is fleeing. It talks about David's movement out of the city. David leaves to the east. David went up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, which is the hillside just to the east of the temple. David went up the ascent, climbing uphill, climbing Mount of Olives, and as he went, his head was covered and he walked barefoot. He is in mourning for the throne of Israel. Then all the people who were with him, each covered his head and went up weeping as they went. You get to the chapter 16, next chapter, first verse. Now when David had passed a little beyond the summit, he was climbing Mount of Olives. He gets to the top of it. He goes over to the other side of the Mount of Olives. Somebody meets him. It's Ziba. It's the servant. It's the head man in Saul's house who told David that Mephibosheth was alive and where he was living. It's this man, Ziba, who meets David and lies to him. That's my take on this situation. You choose your own side. Ziba, as David is fleeing Jerusalem, he shows up. The servant of Mephibosheth, he met with him, and with him he had a couple of saddled donkeys, and on them were 200 loaves of bread. He's brought provision for these men of David as they're leaving Israel. He brings 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a jug of wine. Interesting. Do you remember the story in 1 Samuel chapter 25? I'm telling you this because we can approximate how many men left with David. I'd say about 600 left Jerusalem with David. And the reason I say that is because Ziba brought almost the exact same amount of food that Abigail brought David in 1 Samuel chapter 25 when he had 600 hungry men with him and went to ask Nabal, remember, Abigail's husband, for food, and this fool rejected David, and the story goes, you can read it in 1 Samuel 25, but it's almost the exact amount of food, which leads me to believe David had 500 or 600 men in entourage as he's leaving Jerusalem. But Ziba shows up. Where's Mephibosheth? Isn't that a great question? Why have you come, servant of Mephibosheth, with this gracious gift so that we can make our journey safely and not starve to death? Where is Mephibosheth is the question. The next verse, verse 2, 2 Samuel 16:2, the king says to Ziba, why do you have these things? I mean, why have you shown up with all these things? Ziba said, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride, the royal family, the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, those in your entourage, those in your small army here, and the wine for whoever is faint in the wilderness to drink. Wine at the time, fermented grape juice, alcoholic wine was medicinal. One of the purposes for it was medicine. And so they sent wine as medicine for the faint in the wilderness. In the heat of the escape, have wine. So that's why I brought all these things. Verse 3, the king said, and where is your master's son? Where is Saul's grandson, Mephibosheth? And Ziba said to the king, and you get to choose, true or false, behold, he is staying in Jerusalem. For he said, today the house of Israel will restore the kingdom of my father to me. The question becomes, did Mephibosheth really say this? What Ziba is saying, that with this Judahite, this tribe of Judah king named David, now that you're out of the way, I'm sure that the 10 tribes who supported Saul's son Ishbosheth, I'm sure that the 10 tribes of Israel will raise me up so that I can be my grandfather's king. They'll put me on the throne. That's what Ziba says to David, that Mephibosheth didn't come because with you gone, he expects to be made king. The question is there any truth in that at all? Or is this a bold-faced lie from Ziba that he is telling David, you can tell by passion which side I'm on? I don't believe this at all, based on what I'm about to show you in the rest of the story. Did Mephibosheth really make this statement? I expect to be made king now. Was that his heart as David is having to run from his own son Absalom, or is that not Mephibosheth's heart? Further in the story, let me read you the next verse. The king said, behold, this was King David's response to Ziba, saying, Mephibosheth has waited you out and expects to be king in your place. David makes an immediate decision. Now imagine David, he's running for his life. He's got to not only be in a hurry, winded, emotionally just distraught, psychologically distraught. How can my own flesh and blood rise up against me like this? Why am I fleeing yet again from family? What is going on in this life? David's leaving. Ziba says, even Mephibosheth has abandoned you. And in his haste, David doesn't ask any more questions, doesn't seek to get any more proof, David simply says this to Ziba: behold, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is yours. David believes him. David believes Ziba that Mephibosheth thinks he's going to be king. So David immediately, in a rash judgment, hasty decision, David says, all that I gave him, I'm giving to you. And Ziba said, I prostrate myself. And I would add, it worked, you foolish king. Gotcha. Just listen to the rest of the story. I prostrate myself. Let me find favor in your sight, O my Lord the king. I think it's all a show. Further into the story, David returns to Jerusalem. This only lasts for a short amount of time. David's army and son-in-law or nephew, Joab, they find Absalom. Absalom, remember, he's the guy with the thick hair, gets stuck in the tree. They pierce him through with the spear. Absalom dies. So David is on his way back into Jerusalem. We saw him leave. We saw Ziba show up. Mephibosheth has abandoned you. David says, you can have everything. A little bit of time goes by. David's coming back into Jerusalem. Who's going to meet him now? 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 15. This is the end of the story. The king then returned. Absalom is dead. The threat is gone. I can go back to Jerusalem and continue being the king of Israel. The King David, this is David, King David returned and came as far as the Jordan. So he is left to the east. He's gone across the Jordan River into the land on the east side of the river. He's left the promised land. Now he's at the shores of the Jordan River, and his people come to usher him across the river back into the promised land. Judah came. This is his own tribe. Judah came to Gilgal in order to go to meet the king, to bring the king across the Jordan. I would say in like a boat flotilla, right? It's a river. And so I would think they had a boat tied to a boat, making a bridge for the king and his men to come back across the Jordan into the promised land where he was the rightful king. Verse 17 says this: there were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him. So not only did the tribe of Judah show up, but Saul's tribe, Mephibosheth's tribe, the tribe of Benjamin showed up at the river to welcome the king back in. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, or with Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons, his 20 servants were with him. So Ziba shows up at the river. They rush to the Jordan River before the king. You go down a few more verses, Mephibosheth shows up. Verse 19, or chapter 19, verse 24, then Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king. Remember, he's lame. He can't do these things on his own. He had neither... Now listen, let me just take you back for a second. Don't read this. Listen to what I'm going to say, please. Ziba said that when David fled Jerusalem, Mephibosheth said, now's my chance to be king. David's gone. The people of Israel will make me their king. That's what he was accused of saying. But look what reality shows you. It says Mephibosheth came down to meet the king, and since the day that the king had left Jerusalem, he had neither cared for his feet. Does it sound like he's prepping to be the mighty king of God's chosen people, Israel? Or does it sound instead like he's in deep grief and mourning over a man who gave him things he didn't deserve? A man who showed him the kindness of God is being pushed out of his kingdom by his own son. In mourning, he did not care for his feet, nor had he trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he came home in peace. You ask me, Mephibosheth's heart, it was entirely in David's ring, in David's corner. Entirely. He didn't care for himself. He didn't even care for his own hygiene until the day that King David was coming back into the land. This does not sound like a man who's ready to take the throne of Israel from this Cretan, this Judahite David. It's not the man's heart. The next verse says, it was when he came from Jerusalem to meet the king that the king said to him, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? I know what Ziba said, but I also can see your condition. So now that I have a minute's peace, I want to hear from you, sir. Why did you not go with me that day? A fair king, realizing, wait a minute, something doesn't add up here. David's having to look at Mephibosheth and his condition and wonder, wait a minute, you don't look like a man who's trying to steal the kingship from me. Why didn't you go? There's got to be more to this story. What a fool. I should have given more time when Ziba told me that. I should have sought out more answer, but I didn't. Mephibosheth answers David, "O my lord the king, my servant deceived me." What's his servant's name? Ziba. He lied to me. He deceived me the same way he deceived you. He deceived me, for your servant said, he's speaking of himself. This is Mephibosheth saying, I had decided that I would have a donkey saddled for me. He can't do it himself as a lame man. I will saddle a donkey for myself. I'll have someone do it. Ziba. That I may ride on it and go with the king. My intention was to leave with you. But because your servant is lame, I had to have help. The next verse says, moreover, not only did Ziba probably made an agreement, yes, I'll go saddle a donkey for you and we can all ride together. By the time Mephibosheth looks around, Ziba's gone with half of the food in the pantry, the raisin cakes and all the rest of it, and he's going to make himself to be a hero. He lives the crippled man at home without a saddled donkey, without help to get on the donkey. Mephibosheth, the lame man, can do nothing to change his situation. So not only did he lie to me about saddling me a donkey, but then he abandoned me. And then he says, Mephibosheth continuing, not only that, King David, he has slandered your servant by the Lord the king. He has slandered your servant to my Lord the king. What he told you is a lie. I never said that I was going to be king. I've been in mourning since the day you left. He said, but my Lord the king, speaking of David, he said, you, David, are like an angel of God. What does he mean by that? You see things the way they really are. I'm throwing myself at your mercy. Now you know both sides of the story, King David. What do you say now? You're as adequate a judge as the angel of God himself. You see things clearly. What say you, Lord David? Therefore do what is good in your sight. He throws himself at the mercy of David. Whatever you say, David, if you want to keep it the way it is and Mephibosheth gets all Saul's land, so be it. You see things correctly. I will abide by your judgment, and whatever you decree, will live by it. David realizes, I messed this all up. The next verse, for all my father's household, this is Mephibosheth's heart. All my father's household was nothing but dead men before my Lord the king. Before you entered my life, David, I was hiding away from my life in Lodebar. You've given me life. You've shown me the love of God. Probably a closer relationship with God for Mephibosheth because of how David imitated God. You've shown me and given me much that I never deserved. We were nothing. Yet you set your servant among those who ate at your own table. What right do I have yet that I should complain anymore to the king? It's in your court. What will you do? And the king says to Mephibosheth, why do you still speak of your affairs? I've heard enough. I have decided. And the king's decision, you and Ziba shall divide the land. I wonder if this was a test. Does this remind you of anything? The division of a piece of property to decide which person is lying? Does this remind you of a story? What's it remind you of? What? In David's son Solomon's reign, Solomon had asked God for wisdom. God gives David more wisdom than any other man. The very first event that happens after that, Solomon's wisdom is tested. And 2 women come to him with 1 baby, and both of them claim, this is my child. The other child died. We both had a baby. 1 baby died, and the surviving kid is mine. And the way Solomon sought to find the answer was, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll cut the baby in half. You can each have half. And who spoke up? The mother of the child said, no, give the baby to her. And then Solomon knew. The other woman said, that sounds great, cut the child in half. The mother said, no, don't do that. Give the child to her. I'd rather my child live than my child be slaughtered here today. That's how Solomon figured that out. David says, I wonder if Solomon knew this story. The answer has to be yes. David says to Mephibosheth, you and Ziba half the land. We'll divide it. I would say that's a test of character. In verse 30, Mephibosheth said to the king, let him take it all. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about this story? Who's lying, Ziba or Mephibosheth? Mephibosheth says, let him even take it all. All I wanted was for you, my lord the king, to come safely to your own house. And that occurs today. We're crossing the Jordan River. It's not about stuff. It's not about any of it. If Ziba wants the land, let him have it. I praise God that you, David, are back in the land, back on the throne. That's the heart of Mephibosheth. All he wanted was for David to be seated on his rightful throne, to be king again in Jerusalem. Ziba was the jealous servant who sees the opportunity to steal this land from his new master, Mephibosheth. It almost worked. And the very end of the story, quickly, 2 verses. There's more to Mephibosheth's story. In the very end of it, there was a people called the Gibeonites. I take you back in time. Joshua was coming into the land early in the conquest. Joshua has defeated Jericho, Bethel, Ai. Joshua is marching into the land westward. The next town he's about to come to and destroy is the town of Gibeah. And the Gibeonite men realize if we don't do something, he's going to kill us all like he did to all those other towns. So they hatch this scheme. We will go, we will act, we'll dress ourselves and take provisions like we've been on a long journey, like we're people from a far, far away land. We'll come into the land and we'll plead with the king. No, we're not your enemies from the land. We're from far away. Make a covenant with us that you will protect us. Solomon in his haste, like his father David did sometimes in this story, didn't get all the facts, or not Solomon, but Joshua makes an agreement with these men. Well, later in the story, Saul kills some of the men of Gibeon. He slaughters the town. And God brings a 3-year drought, a famine on Israel because Saul didn't keep Joshua's word to the people of Gibeon. So here we go, a couple of verses, 2 Samuel chapter 21. The men of Gibeon are talking with David. David realizes that we're in famine because of this fool Saul having broken the Jewish word to a Gentile nation. That's why we're suffering here. So he goes to Gibeah and says, what can we do to make this right? And the men of Gibeah say, we want 7 sons of Saul. We'll kill them all. And that will appease this. They said to the king, the man who consumed us, that's Saul, and who planned to exterminate us from remaining within any border of Israel, let 7 men from his sons be given to us. and we will hang them before Yahweh in Gibeah of Saul, the chosen of the Lord. So we want 7 of King Saul's son. And David said, I will give them to you. Who is one of Saul's grandsons? Mephibosheth. Is David about to hand over Mephibosheth to the men of Gibeah? The next verse says, but the king spared Mephibosheth. Why would he do that? Because I made a promise to my friend Jonathan, and I'll keep it until the day I die. The king spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of the oath of the Lord which was between them, between David and Saul's son Jonathan. I promise to keep your name alive. I promise to keep your family tree line alive. I will continue to keep my promise. It would have been so easy for David to count. The first 7 men he saw, Mephibosheth is right there with him. You and your son Michal, y'all go to the death. But he didn't. He spared Mephibosheth for Jonathan's sake. That is the end of the story of Mephibosheth and David's kindness to him. But you'll see the character of David, the imitator of God in all of this, that from beginning to end, as soon as David found out there was a man that he could show God's kindness to, he started it and he finished it. All the life of Mephibosheth taken care of by the character of King David. What a man, David. Let's close in prayer.